If you have a pulse, you probably hate the subject of taxes and running the bookkeeping portion of your business. But like it or not, if you want to be a successful podcaster, you are going to have to pay attention to your numbers. But don't worry, we have the answer for you, Core Financial. Our friends over at Core Financial have taken the pressure off of us so we can focus on what we love doing most, running our podcast. They take care of all of our taxes, monthly bookkeeping, financial plans, and make sure we take full advantage of all of the tax benefits we qualify for. It just feels good knowing we aren't going to get a big surprise during tax season. If you are serious about building a business with your podcast, head on over to howtomakeapodcast.co/core to see what they can do for you.
Welcome to this week's episode of How to Make a Podcast. My name is Nick Miller. I am sitting here with my glass of nice warm tea. John has his as well.
I'm going to take a drink in the middle of the... Oh, gosh.
I just needed people to know that I actually was drinking some nice, tasty tea. We're staying in an Airbnb doing a bunch of batch recording this week. And they only had 2 things of coffee, and I didn't bring mine, and we drank it yesterday, and so we're
drinking tea like a chump.
Does anyone else who ever drinks coffee regularly, they drink tea, and then they feel like they're cheating on their coffee? Because that is how I feel.
Me? Oh,
yes.
I didn't know if I was one of them.
Anyway, but this week, John and I have been together doing a bunch of batch recording our podcast episodes. And so this is actually our 6th episode that we have recorded today.
Yeah.
Just busting a lot of them out, cranking a lot of them
Busted
it out.
By the way, when you batch record on episode 6, you just don't give any cares.
Yeah, you do stuff like drink your hot tea into the microphone. Anyway, but batch recording, it's an amazing thing that if you are not doing it, you should highly consider doing it for your podcast. So that is what we are going to do in this week's episode, is just talk about batch recording, because that's what we're doing. John, what do you have to say about the good old batch recorder?
Well, to start with, batch recording, just like a simple definition, obviously, would be recording a whole bunch of content all at once and then releasing it slowly over time. So, we're recording 6 or 7 episodes for How to Make a Podcast, 6 or 7 episodes for How to Film Weddings, and doing that over a 2-day period of time. And that gives us around 2 months before needing to produce any more content for our podcast. So with our busy schedules, we can do different things and work on different ways to grow our podcast, things like that. So we're going to get into talking about why we batch record, pros and cons, all that kind of good stuff. The tea I just drank was hot, and I'm like trying to catch my breath.
Oh, yeah. So batch recording a whole bunch of content and episodes.
I just want to say what's up my batches so bad, but I'm not going to say it.
You're not going to say what's up my batches? No. Okay. Anyway, so we're recording a whole bunch. Like, we're here at the beginning part of December, and we're going to be recording into January as we're doing this. And one of the big reasons why we are big fans of batch recording is because we are busy. And you guys know this when you record a podcast. Let's say you have an hour-long podcast. How much time does it take for you to get your setup, to get your computer ready, to get everything going? And you're looking at almost, an hour and a half, 2 hour long commitment. Okay, how much time can you save? So it's like for every hour-long episode, you're really spending 2 hours on it. So how much time can you save if you record 4 episodes at once? And then now, before, when you recorded 2 episodes, you were spending 4 hours. Now you were getting, 5 hours and you're recording 4 episodes, that sort of thing. And so it saves you time in that regard, which gives you the ability to focus on other content. For people like us, where we have, our other podcast, and we have education, and we have a YouTube channel, and we have other things that we're trying to grow, courses, that sort of stuff, it gives us time to focus on that sort of thing. Batch recording for you, if you're just kind of a hobbyist podcaster, you can focus in on those things that you've always wanted to focus in on, or maybe you batch record over a weekend, so then you can finally do those chores that you're spouse is nagging you to do or something like that. Like
My spouse has never nagged me ever. I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah.
No,
So,
the batch recording is interesting because, like, a lot of times I think, especially over the last 2.5 years or so of recording podcasts, Thursday or Friday would get here. We didn't have anything recorded yet. Something came up. We're having to come in on the weekend, or like, because consistency is really important to us. We know the importance of a consistent content calendar. Say that 3 times fast, but
consistent content calendar.
don't actually do it 3 times. Please stop. But by batch recording, it not only saves us time. Like, I think about, if I'm doing a podcast with Nick and we're going to jump on a Zoom call, got to get everything prepped, all that stuff. And what you're saying is correct. For an hour episode usually is about a 2-hour window of time. And instead of that, by batch recording, we can knock out several episodes. And it moves me to the next point. Batch recording gives you the ability to be more focused with your content. Mm-hmm. So for what we did this weekend, or for this week to record, is we were able to kind of like talk through a bunch of ideas all at once and know, okay, this episode makes more sense after this episode. This episode makes sense because the holidays are coming, this or whatever it is. But you can actually have more of a plan, and you can, after talking about our goals on the podcast in the last episode, having batch recordings helps us to stay on track with our plan, the direction we want to take this, the kind of content. So it's not just random content.
Yeah. And another thing that why we love batch recording and we think it's a great idea is how many of you, as John was saying, you're scrambling at the last minute. I mean, I hate that feeling, you know, whenever we have to do that. And we have done seasons because we were so busy with everything else that we were doing that for weeks, and we hated it. We hated it. And it really turned this thing that we love, that has turned into a job, but it really felt like a job.
Yeah.
Because of that.
We have to do this.
We have to do this, and we have to have this thing out. And it really took priority whenever I would rather have done other things. And so we're big fans. This is the first time that we've ever done this in person. We have before, in John in Tulsa and me in Wichita, done like, okay, we've sat down and we've recorded a couple or 3, in a day or something like that, but never together. But because we're able to be together, like, it's just easier to hit record on our devices, get things going. And then, now we have all of these episodes, we have this backlog so that we can push stuff out, because you never know what's going to happen, and it can, one of us, just needs to take some time off and we're not able to record or something like that. It just gives us that little bit of peace of mind because you're able to stay consistent even with what's going on in the world.
And then for sure, as we record video, and even if all you do is audio, if you are one of these people that are having to set up and tear down your studio all the time, or rent out a spot, or go to the local recording place and record a podcast, if you are able to do all of these episodes at once, you get a more consistent sound, you get a more consistent video. Like the last 6 episodes, they all sound similar because we're all in the same location. We're not having to worry about that being inconsistent. I know a lot of people will podcast from their car, and then they'll podcast from their attic, and then their living room, and so like sitting down and having these episodes all in one spot gives you consistency with your sound and your look.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing, I know that there's some people, John was just talking about your studio and tearing it up and packing it up. Another thing, I know there's some people out there that actually rent studio space for this kind of stuff. And it's going to be way cheaper for you to rent a space once a month, or, and you can do, okay, I'm going to record my next 2 months of content or something like that, rather than doing it something weekly or something really, quite often, if you're paying for a space or something like that. So there's definitely a lot of big bonuses to batch recording. I know that we have done this, and now, we're going to have to, we're not going to be able to do this for every episode, moving forward. We're still going to have to do stuff remote and far from each other. However, we're really liking this feel of being able to record, 6 to 10 episodes of a podcast, and then have our calendar mapped out and know exactly where it is that we're going. So highly recommend the batch.
Yeah. And before going to break two, another point that I was just thinking of is like batch recording, it gives you the peace of mind that you're going to have consistent content if you need a week, if you need, an episode 1 week, and we're still reaching out to potential guests for our podcasts and like getting them on the schedule and different things. And so we're creating content of things that we've always wanted to be, doing, but never really fit in anywhere, whatever. So you can also record batch episodes just so you have them to sprinkle out over the next year even. I mean, you can literally, for us, we're talking about batch recording and it's December as we're recording this, but we could play this episode in April if we wanted to, and it would make sense. It would be good content for you. And so that is the thing, having that, it's like having a savings account. It's that peace of mind that's like, okay, now I feel like I can be more creative. Now I feel like, because I know that like my bases are covered. So, okay. So we have a lot to talk about when it comes to batch recording, like how we set it up, how to make it sound right, how to prepare content, things like that. But we're going to talk about that after this break.
We can't tell you how frustrating it was for us to upload our podcast when we first got started. The websites were clunky, we had data limits, and it was all so confusing. That is, until we found Zencastr. Zencastr is an online platform built for podcasters to not only upload their podcasts, track their listeners, connect their audience, and so much more. Zencastr plans have no upload or download limits, so your cost won't grow as you do. Embed their player that automatically updates to show the latest episode of your show. Zencastr lets you see your podcast downloads along with your traffic, website, and Google Analytics. Zencastr also supports multiple podcasts under one account. The best part is, if you already have a podcast on another platform, you can switch to Zencastr with a one-click importer, all free of charge. So what are you waiting for? Head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/Zencastr to start saving time and money with your podcast today. So you've got everything you need for your podcast. You've recorded your audio and video. You're so excited. But wait, you don't know how to master the audio or edit the video of your podcast. We know someone who can help. The podcast editors. Picture this. You record both audio and video for your podcast. You upload it to your remote editor, and a few days later, your podcast is ready for you to upload and push to the world. What will you do with your extra time? Connect with sponsors? Grow your Facebook group? Start that project or even course you have dreamed of for months? The possibilities are endless. We are blown away by the podcast editors and love working with them and using their services. They can edit audio, video, or both for your podcast. Don't get stuck trying to do this on your own. Get in touch with the podcast editors today. If you'd like to save 50% off of your first project, head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/thepodcasteditors.
And we are back from break.
We are.
It was like a great break. We've got a lot done in the break. We really just sit here for 5 seconds, but that's okay. We're back from break.
We are.
Hopefully you enjoyed hearing from our sponsors. Nick,
yes,
we've got a question of the day
presented
by Core Financial. Now, before moving on, I have to just say thank you to Core Financial. They have saved me tens of thousands of dollars on my taxes in the last few years by helping me prepare my taxes, tax prep, everything from A to Z when it comes to making sure I'm doing things correctly. So Core Financial, check them out, howtomakeapodcast.co/core.
Core.
The question.
Yes.
How many episodes should I try to batch record?
I think that this is going to be very dependent on your type of podcast and the type of time and how you like to do it. Like if you are someone that has to like write out an entire script for the whole thing, like you're going to have to do a lot of pre-work to do that. Mm-hmm. If you're that's more like us, where you just kind of have some bullet points and idea, you don't have to do nearly as much work ahead of time. So, and if you're like a pop culture, current events, weekly, this is what happened in the world kind of thing, then batch recording probably isn't going to work for you very well because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Unless you're from the future. That would be interesting. Anyway,
I am from the future.
If you have a podcast like ours or something like that, where it's just kind of conversational, just topics that we're coming up with, we're listening to our community and answering those questions, I would probably suggest doing as many as you can in a sitting. Probably trying to get 2 months worth, of podcasts done so that you have, so for us, that would be about 8. If we could do about 8, that'd be great. For us, that's where we'd kind of like to be. That would be my recommendation. But, if you're like recording one day, once a month for your 4 episodes, that could be great for you too. And, like the first Monday of every month, I'm going to just record, and get it all done in one day. Something like that would be.
Yeah. And it depends too on how long your podcast is and everything, but something that feels like you're pushing it a little bit, but not too much. There's a balance there. For us to record 15 episodes in a day, it's possible because these are like 30 or less minute episodes, but probably not the most, at a certain point, you start losing some of your pizzazz, or you drink too much tea or had a burger for lunch and you're just hiccuping and stuff.
Pizzazz.
So yes, we recommend that. And then the next question, Nick, kind of what should they be thinking about when you're talking about setting up batch recording?
So we were in an Airbnb. We brought in our own lighting that's off camera that you can't see, but so we're lit up. We kind of made do with what we had and kind of made it the best wasn't overkill. I think there were a few things that we could have done, but I don't think it would have been necessarily worth the time and energy for us to set it up. So I would just look for something that looks the best, that sounds the best, if you're not doing it in your own normal studio. Okay. The sound quality is going to matter a whole lot. Is a room really echoey? Do you have a bunch of dampening stuff down? Is there a lot of cloth? This room's actually pretty echoey. You should see all the pillows and blankets and stuff that we have just laying around here trying to dampen that sound just a little bit. Those are the things. But I would just do it. And that's only if you're doing video for the look of it. If you're doing just audio, all you need to be concerned is with the sound of the room. But again, if you're doing it in your own studio, then it should just be your normal setup.
Yeah, it just taking, like, again, if you've put the effort in to make it sound as good as it can, you don't want to be inconsistent. So getting it set up so it sounds the best and looks the best. And then the next thing, what's been cool about batch recording episodes is you're able to prepare your content. We take time and we write out just the bullet points for the episodes, ideas, and kind of decide these are the episodes we're going to record. This is kind of how long they're going to be. These are the bullet points. And you're able, like for us, we write out bullet points for episodes. Like I'm talking right now and it's not written down before I say it. But the bullet point is, preparing your content. So now I'm talking about preparing content and it's starting to get Inception-like. But the point being, we're able to write this out before we hit record and make sure that we have all the details that we want and we prepare it. And you can do that for, like, if you're planning like the first Monday of every month to batch record for your month's worth of content, well, the last week of the month, you might have to spend a few hours writing out all the content to get yourself ready for the next month. And so you can plan out, okay, this is the direction I want my episodes to go. This is the content that I want to have. This is the interviews I want to have, whatever it is. You can prepare all that content and get it written out. So whenever you do get into your studio, you're ready to hit record and you feel confident in the information.
Yeah. And again, this is just going to depend, how much time you spend doing this is going to depend on the style of podcast that you have. I know that there are several podcasters out there that, because they're solo, they write out a full script and they just read it, which is perfectly okay. But you just know that you're going to have to spend more time up front doing all of that kind of stuff. So there's that. So we wanted to kind of talk about some of the pros and the cons of doing batch recording. We like to start with the cons because we're positive people, so we end on a high note. I kind of made that up it's a true thing, but I just kind of made that up and I'm sticking with it. So one, if you are doing a bunch of batch recording, and depending on how far out you go and with your content calendar and what you have figured out, you could have current events that could be missed. It's just a part of life. Something is going to happen over the next 2 months as we're doing this that might affect our podcast schedule. And maybe it's something that we really need to talk about or something like that. So you just need to be mindful and know and understand that there are some current events that could be missed. And you just need to be okay with that. Because we're on a podcast where we're not really talking about current events like that doesn't really affect us too much, but your podcast might.
Yeah. And another side of that, is that like some of your episodes could unintentionally be insensitive. Like if we would have batch recorded in January of last year or February of last year for 10 weeks on like having the most incredible wedding video season, well, COVID hit and we had to shut things down in March here in the States. And so all of those episodes would have been insensitive and irrelevant. And so that would have been a problem if we would have recorded about what you should be doing in spring to prepare for your summer weddings or whatever that is, because summer weddings weren't happening. So you could be unintended. Like I know that like Gary Vee talks a lot about like automated messages going out and stuff. And like automation is different than this. But like if you recorded a bunch of stuff and God forbid some kind of major catastrophe happened, some kind of terrorist something or whatever, your episodes might be completely irrelevant. So that's a potential con. And then some people could actually, if people know that these are just recorded one after another, you could think, oh, like this isn't as relevant to me. It's not like fresh, or people might think that. But if the content is solid, it doesn't matter if it's like been recorded 6 weeks ago or 2 hours ago. So yeah, you miss out on some of those current events in the lingo and the thing. Like when this episode airs, it's probably going to be
mid-January.
Mid-January. I don't know if there's anything that might have happened in pop culture, like you were talking about, that we could have hit on, but we can't because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right. I mean, in the new Spider-Man Miles Morales game that I got for my birthday on the PlayStation 4 that I played, they had a girl in there and she was cool because she had a podcast.
This is the stuff that you would miss out on.
You would miss out on that kind of stuff if you would have batch recorded and whatever. So some
It's
of
a
the
really
pros,
good point. Take notes on that.
Yeah. So those are some of the cons, but some of the pros of batch recording. One is that you can prepare your content and make it cohesive. So you can kind of look at your, 5, 6, 7, 8 episode run and kind of figure out, okay, these 3 go together or these 4 go together. Or I was like, okay, we want to talk about this topic and it makes sense to talk about it before we talk about this topic, something like that, where you can make it really cohesive and make sense to the content that you are putting out together. Talked about this earlier, but if you are renting a studio space, you can potentially save money in doing that by just doing it once a month or once every other month or once a quarter or something like that. And then the last thing that I think is so powerful in all the things that we do, that we preach when it comes to podcasting and stuff, is being consistent. And we now know after today, we're going to have 6 or 7 episodes. So we know for the next month and a half, we have episodes that if something happens in our lives or whatever the case may be, we have some stuff where you can continue to be consistent in this podcast world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the consistency compounds, we talk about that a lot. And by having these episodes recorded, the peace of mind of absolutely the money we will be saving in time, like we're going to save so much time by doing it this way. We're not going to have all of our episodes like this, but once every month or two, we plan to get together and record 6 or 7 episodes of our podcast. So that way we are free to do the things, to interview certain things or think of certain topics, and we can always push these episodes back. I will say this before signing off today. Batch recording is one of our sections inside of the podcast blueprint, our complete system for how we made $400,000 last year on our podcast at the podcast blueprint. Nick, I'll let you hit him with the link, all that good stuff, because I always mess up the links. But batch recording is one of, I think it's over 90 sections now. Is that how many sections?
Yeah, we have over 90 sections in the podcast blueprint. It's our complete guide to podcasting course. It's amazing, great content. That is thepodcastblueprint.co. Thepodcastblueprint.co. You head over there. You can get all the information about the podcast blueprint. Again, we do talk a lot about batch recording in there. This is some supplemental information for you. But yeah, if you have the time and the ability to sit down and batch record a bunch of episodes, it's going to, I think it can drastically change your podcasting life if you implement and do this well. Mm-hmm. John, it's been great batching with you.
Something my batches.
Said it again.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's been great batching with you over the last couple days, and I'm excited for the future of how to make a podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, we will see you.
See ya.